Welcome to Me Financial, the podcast designed to inspire your financial life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am Michelle Moses, your host, and I appreciate you listening today. Today, we are going to be talking about building wealthy habits from reading personal finance books. And to talk about that, I have Nick Hutchison here to talk about it. And he is the founder of the popular book review site BookThinkers and the author of Rise of the Reader, Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn, the ultimate guide for transforming information into life-changing results. Nick has read over 400 personal development books, but implementing their valuable lessons was tougher than just finishing the next chapter. Through trial and error, he developed an easy-to-follow framework to retain the knowledge needed to transform his life completely. Now he's sharing over 100 habits to implement into your own reading journey, and these also include many wealthy habits he's learned from personal finance books. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here, Michelle. Can I ask you the first question today?
Sure.
So I'm curious, if people come to you and they say, hey, Michelle, you're an expert on personal finance and all things money. What's the book that I should start with? I'm curious. What do you recommend?
Oh, they ask that all the time. And I always say, I don't know, because there's so many different ones and it depends. It depends on where they're starting in their journey, you know, because if they need help with budgeting, that's a whole nother story. But if they're more sophisticated, so it usually entails a conversation. That's a good question. What do you normally say?
Well, I do the same thing that you do. I say, instead of reading with my intention, let me ask you a few follow-up questions so I can get a better idea of what you're looking to learn. And then I can answer the question and you can read with your own intention, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. I'm glad to know I'm on the right track.
Yeah, well, two peas in a pod. Yeah, I do the same thing. And sometimes it frustrates people, but I think it's more important to read a book that's relevant for your situation, not what other people think.
Yeah. They always want, like, what's the overarching personal finance book? I'm like, I don't think that there really is one. I think Simple Wealth, I'm not even going to Nick somebody, it was from years ago. Inevitable Wealth, Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth. Is that right? It's got a tree on the front of it. I should have studied up here. You have it there on you. That's it. Yes. Is that the right title?
Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray. And I actually haven't read this book yet, but it was just gifted to me. So it still has the plastic on it.
Yeah. Oh, you should read it. It is good. It is very good. It's really about investing in the stock market and how if you invest in the stock market, you'll make the most money. You just gotta keep it in there. Just a little tidbit for everybody. Okay. So, I like that question. That's good. And so how did you get started on your reading journey? How did you get interested in all of this?
What might surprise anybody that could see my background, right? I've got like 1,000 books behind me, is that I was not much of a reader growing up. So I was more of the athlete stereotype, not really much of the academic. I mean, you couldn't pay me to read a book. And that behavior, that attitude followed me through most of my college experience as well. It all changed for me when I took an internship going into my senior year of college at a local software company. It was a sales internship. And my boss at the time, I think he recognized some unfulfilled potential. That'd be putting it nicely, right? I was like this 20 kind of know-it-all, a little bit arrogant sales guy. And I just thought I'd get in and dial for dollars, make a bunch of money. And he said, listen, man, you're commuting an hour each way, 5 days a week. You should check out podcasts where successful business people are being interviewed and they talk about what they've done to become successful. And I took him up on that suggestion. And very quickly, right, because I was commuting a lot, very quickly, I heard these successful people mention the same book titles over and over and over and over again. And at some point, I just realized, like, if these successful people are recommending it and I'm choosing not to read because I don't think it's cool or something like that, then I'm choosing to live under my potential. And so, when I went to the bookstore for the first time, I think the original insecurity that I was trying to overcome was actually financial insecurity, because I was a business student that didn't know anything about money. And I was taking classes on all sorts of money subjects as a business student. And I was just barely getting by and I didn't really understand the language. But after reading a couple of books, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason, like within a couple of weeks, I was leading those conversations with friends. And when I went back to school, I felt like a rock star. And so that's what started my reading journey, because these books, like I was telling you before press record, they condense decades of somebody else's greatest life lessons about money, in this case, into days of consumption. It's like the greatest shortcut ever. Mm-hmm. And people choose not to read them because it's not cool or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's honestly backing up a little bit. I think it's impressive that you remember the titles of the books and who they're by. It's always hard for me to remember the exact title. And those ones that you mentioned are all very good. I mean, they're all like different ways to think about finance. And so did you like continue? So how did you then continue? Was it just like a spark that went off and then you just kept reading and reading and reading?
Yes. I mean, I overcame something that caused a lot of anxiety for me fairly quickly.
Oh, that's good.
And then I just thought, like, what other areas of my life can I apply this magic sauce to? Like, what other areas of my life can I read about and then solve these problems or build these skills? And so I'm working in a software sales position. And so I start reading books on sales and marketing and communication and persuasion and negotiation. And I'm applying them to the role and I'm making a lot of money. And I'm just kind of like flying up the corporate ladder. And I'm trying to push these books onto everybody else and nobody wants to read them because everybody wants to scroll on socials or watch Netflix or like go out, right? I'm in my early to mid 20s when I really get into this stuff. And so that's why I continued. I mean, there was a relief of different anxieties and problems, but also money quickly followed the reading, which was interesting.
Well, I think that makes sense though, because then your confidence went up. And so since your confidence went up and you were feeling better about it, and it really didn't take that much to just open up that dam, it sounds like, just reading a few books, and then your confidence went up, and then of course the money comes in. That's just how it works. I believe it works.
That first book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, I mean, it blew my mind because right in the beginning of the book, he makes a statement. He says that poor and middle-class kids have poor and middle-class money habits because the subject of money is not taught in the school system. So not everybody's on the same page. It's taught at home. These behaviors are caught by observing our parents, not taught, right? And so rich kids, they're observing rich money habits. And so they're learning financial literacy and investing and the language of money at a young age. So if you're a poor middle class kid, you have to break that cycle by reading books and getting outside of your comfort zone and asking questions. And so, I mean, there were so many things in that book, even though it was simple, right? It's like a, kind of like a fake story. It's under 200 pages. It's very simple language, but it just aha after aha after aha. And I was like, whoa, I can see something that most people can't see.
That's cool.
Money was available all of a sudden.
Right. Okay. And so then what started to happen because obviously there's something that happened in between you starting this and then writing your book. So then what happened?
So as I continued to read these amazing books and my friends and family wanted nothing to do with it, I turned to social media. I wasn't a big social media guy at the time, but I just started sharing the books I was reading on socials, I suppose, to connect with like-minded people. And my following grew pretty fast, right? I'm posting the books I'm reading. I'm sharing what I'm thinking about them. And pretty soon authors are reaching out to me and offering to pay for book reviews. So I kind of had this side hustle starting to build on the side while I'm working my full-time software sales job.
This is like everyone's online story dream. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I'm reading books on business and I'm following up with these authors and trying to understand why they're promoting and marketing their books. And now I'm getting paid more and more as the following continues to grow. And I'm trying out all these different things at that intersection between books and marketing and podcasts and stuff. And eventually, it became a full-time job. My agency now, I've got 10 people on the team. We work with hundreds of authors a year. But as the following continued to grow, people would reach out. And I got the same questions hundreds of times. They'd say, how do I choose the right book for this? Or how do I deal with the fact that I can't remember anything from these books? And why aren't they changing my life, right? So I really started to study that subject. How do we retain and implement more from these books? I didn't really ask to be a book influencer or like a source of knowledge on how to retain and implement more. But I suppose because enough people were asking, I realized there was an opportunity to go become a subject matter expert on that. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you figure out where there's a niche to go into. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I got into it. And I just decided like there was no leverage to answering every question individually. What if I could just do the work one time, write a book about it, and then just say, here's the answer? Have you ever read the book, The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco?
Mm-mm.
It's a good book. It's on money and accelerating wealth. But he has this story in the book that I started to envision myself kind of being in. So he drives a Lamborghini, and that became kind of part of his brand. And he'd be at a restaurant or the grocery store or whatever, and people would come up and say, "What do you do for work? How do I get a Lamborghini?" And he'd pop the trunk, which I guess is in the front of a Lamborghini. I don't have one. And he'd hand them a copy of the book and say, "Here's the roadmap." And so I just started to envision myself being able, when somebody says, "Hey, Nick, how do I take great notes while I'm reading these books?" I envisioned myself being like, "Here's the answer," you know? So that was kind of the initial drive. I just saw a demand for writing the book. And I saw that so many people struggle with this. They're reading the books, they're consuming the information, but they don't do anything with it.
Right. Yeah, because you read so many things and then it kind of lasts, I don't know, a week or two, or while you're even reading it, and then you're on to the next book. And so would you be taking notes? Like how does it kind of work? Because to me, I'd be like taking notes and going back in my notebook and then maybe rereading it to keep it fresh in mind, or top of mind, I guess would be more the saying.
Yeah, I have dozens of recommendations for people inside of my book, Rise of the Reader, but I'll give you one example of what I teach people to do. So I haven't read this book yet that we're talking about, Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth, but I will be reading it soon. So the first thing that I'll do with a new book, instead of just opening it and hoping that it's going to change my life or taking miscellaneous notes, I'll actually set a SMART goal. So this is part of my framework. SMART is a goal-setting acronym that a lot of us are familiar with, but I'll go through it quickly. So S stands for specific. Your goal for the book needs to be very specific. M stands for measurable. So the legendary management guru, Peter Drucker, he would say, what's not being measured can't be managed. So you need to set a goal that's measurable, quantifiable. A stands for attainable. So your goal needs to be realistic. You need to be able to execute against it. If it's too big and becomes overwhelming, we all know what happens. We procrastinate. We don't do anything. R stands for relevant. So you need to be emotionally connected to the goal. You need to have a why behind why you're reading the book, right? Is it building a skill? Is it solving a problem? What is it doing? And then T is time bound. You want to leverage Parkinson's law that essentially states like if, a task will expand to the amount of time that you give it. So your goal needs to be time bound. So if I was reading this book, I might set a SMART goal that's kind of like this: find and implement at least one wealth building tool in my personal financial picture by the end of January or February.
Okay.
And so that's specific. I know what my goal is, right? I'm looking to implement one new wealth building strategy. It's measurable. At the end of the experience, did I implement one thing? Yes or no? That's attainable. I didn't say like make $1 million by the end of February, just implement one thing. I'm emotionally connected to it because money matters a lot. And then time bound by the end of February. And so if I set a SMART goal like that and I write it on the inside cover of the book and I review it every time I read another chapter, then I'm sharing my goal with the book so that the book can share the most important information back with me.
Okay.
And I'll only take notes on actions that I can implement, because I'm not optimizing for like remembering a quote. I'm optimizing for action. So I know that was a ton of info.
No,
but that's an example.
Yeah, no, it's not. So do you like highlight in it, or do you take your own notes, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters that much. I mean, what I do is I go through the book twice. The first pass, I read every word of every page. And if I find something that I might want to implement, I'll quickly highlight it, and maybe I'll take some context notes, but I try not to do that on my first pass through.
Okay.
The second pass through, I'm only rereading the things that I've highlighted. So that's like 1% of the book on the second time through. And that's when I'll think about implementation, and I'll take notes and I'll journal about it and I'll reflect on it and I'll choose what to take action on. So there's kind of two pass throughs.
Okay. I think this is good because as soon as you said the SMART goal, I was and you were explaining it, my anxiety was kind of going up because I'm definitely more of the reader of let me see what this is going to present to me, but as you were going on and just wanting to implement one tiny thing, it immediately took my anxiety down. And realizing having a clear goal for it, I already have a clear goal, but I don't realize it, and I'm not actually saying that. So I think it's important that we say that. Do you know what I mean? Because
I do.
You're going to read a book, and it obviously is going to solve a problem, but I'm not really admitting that to myself by sitting down and just saying, What is this book going to just show me? Oh, that's good. That's good. But if I sit down and I do what you're saying, it's just picking out one thing or two things, or, there might be 10. I don't know once you get into the book, but by just saying one thing, it kind of brings my anxiety down. So I like that a lot. It's a lot more intentional.
Yeah. And at the end of that experience, if you've highlighted 10 things that you could implement, I would say do a quick 80-20 analysis. And I'd say what 20% of those potential actions are going to lead to 80% of the change that you're looking to make. Because not every action is created equal. Sometimes they'll read one chapter of a book and they'll say, oh, I've got it, I'm done. And it's like, what you're choosing to implement out of that first chapter might be 1/100th as valuable as what you would have found a couple chapters later, but you're choosing not to read a little bit farther. So again, not every action is created equal. And I'll throw one other thing. A metaphor kind of came to mind. It's almost like budgeting. Like if you just say, budgeting gives me anxiety. I don't really want to know what my bank accounts look like. Therefore, I'm not gonna look at them. Well, now you're limiting your ability to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And you're also hurting your ability to have that money available for what matters most. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing happens with the book. If you're just like, well, I'll see what hits me. You're sort of ignoring the opportunity to filter for what matters most.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I think by you even saying that, it just kind of turns it around for me. So I love that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, you'll have to try it out next book.
Yeah. So you're not keeping track. It's like you're implementing one thing and then you move on to the next book and you're implementing one thing or maybe two, or I don't know. Is there multiples?
Right. Sometimes there'll be a handful of things that I choose to implement from a book, but most of the time it's just one thing. And that's because I literally got hundreds of books in, sort of became a personal development junkie. And I was optimizing for 52 books a year. That's how many the average CEO reads. Who knows where that comes from? Or 100 books in a year. But that's just a vanity metric. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, and it depends on how long the book is, because I do that on Goodreads and I set up, my goal for the year. And then I found myself intentionally picking shorter books so that I could read my goal. And, I was like, oh, I'm not going to read that 800-page book. I'll get that next year or whatever. So, yeah, I think it is kind of arbitrary depending on the book. So do you focus on one topic at a time, or are you moving around to different? Is there any recommendations on that?
There's two categories of reading that I do today. One is for my business, and I don't have a lot of agency over what I'm reading. Yes, we can choose what authors we're working with, but there are a lot of books that I'm reading as a result of the work that we do. When I'm choosing books, I always try to start with that intention piece. I'm trying to say, what problems am I facing right now that I could overcome more quickly by reading about how somebody else did it, right? A solution exists. A lot of times, as human beings, we think our problems are unique to us, but the fact is 100 billion people have lived before us. Millions of them have lived great lives and written books about it. And those solutions are available for $20 in a few hours of our time. Right. So I read to solve problems, but I also read to build skills. I'm pretty ambitious. I know where I want to go in life. And there are certain things that I need to develop. And a good understanding of money is one of them, but all types of skills that you can read about and you can learn more quickly. So I set an intention before I even decide what I'm reading. Then I go and find the best book for it. And then I sort of have my SMART goal.
Okay. And what is your opinion on audiobooks? Are you reading all of them, the hard books?
It's a great question. A lot of people hate me when I say this, but if I consume 100 books a year, I am listening to about 25, but the facts are the facts. About 80% of the inputs to our brain are visual, 80%. So by default, the other senses only make up 20. And if you're only listening to information, you're probably multitasking. You're probably in the car, you're probably traveling, you're probably doing chores, you're probably doing busy work. So you're at a disadvantage because you're not getting the visual input, and you're also at a disadvantage because you're multitasking. Yeah. So I say listen to books, listen to biographies, long books, fiction, listen to books as a discovery tool to see if something could potentially solve a problem for you. and then go read the physical book after. That's kind of what I recommend.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I was just reading about that too, about how you only, and I'm not going to remember the numbers, but it's about that same thing. Yeah. That you have to read the book because you retain so much more versus listening to it. You don't retain nearly as much. But I like your strategy of doing that for fiction and biographies, and, it may be like the first pass through, but if you're really wanting to implement something, actually reading like the hard book or even like the electronic book would probably be okay too, right?
Right. Okay. Because they're both leveraging the visual input to our brains. And so our ability to store and organize information and then recall that information, I think, is so much more efficient if you're reading the physical book. And then, a fun thing that I actually recommend is read and listen at the same time, kind of a multi-sensory experience. Yeah. And sometimes what that'll do is keep you on pace. I have a lot of people ask me about, oh, Nick, I'm always falling asleep or I daydream and I have a hard time getting through books. And it's like, oh, if you crank up the Audible to like 1.5 or 2x, and then you're forced to follow along, then you're sort of keeping your brain engaged with the material.
I don't know how they do that. I get past 1.2 and I'm getting a little discombobulated. So yeah, I heard people do like 1.5 and 2. I don't know how you even listen to that fast. I can't, maybe it's my brain. I don't know. What is your recommendation for reading your book? Is it the same thing? Because obviously reading your book will then help everybody else read other books and implement them better.
Yeah, you're right. It's a little meta. So it's a book about how to get more from other books. And I recommend reading the physical paper copy or the Kindle version. And I do have an Audible version available for people as well, if you want to use that as, again, like a discovery tool or to read along with the physical book. Okay.
And then, so what are there other ways that people would get started? Like, what would you say to other people that, I don't know, that if somebody was watching this and, or listening to this and they're like, oh, I don't know if I really, is there something to just like push people over the edge?
Absolutely. I love pushing people over the edge because I care so much about these books. I really do. First, I ask people this question, Michelle. I say, if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month, do you think you could do it? Mm-hmm. And that same person who's like, I don't have time, I'm not a good reader, I can't stay focused, they're like, oh yeah, I could read 5, right? So it's not a question of whether or not we can read these books. It's a question of whether or not we value them enough to prioritize it over something else in our schedule.
Yeah, I was going to say prioritization. Yeah.
So if we can get to the point where people are like, okay, I want to read, but I still don't have time, then I recommend kind of the following strategy. I say, instead of trying to find time, just replace a little bit of scrolling in the morning on social media and maybe a little bit of Netflix in the evening with reading a good book. And so 15 minutes in the morning, not all of your social media, just 15 minutes of it. And maybe the first 15 minutes of your Netflix or whatever you're watching in the evening. So together that's 30 minutes. Somebody who's just starting out, maybe that's about 20 pages. If you could do that 5 days a week, that's 100 pages a week. By replacing, again, just a little bit of scrolling and a little bit of Netflix with reading a good book. And most of these books, they're 200 pages or less. The one that you were talking about is, let's see, it's like, it's 200 pages. So you could read this in 2 weeks just by 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. Mm-hmm. And that's the strategy. How do I get 26 books in a year? By reading 100 pages a week. How do I get to 100 pages a week? 30 minutes a day. Mm. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Okay. Well, and even if people don't want to get started, just start out with one book and see what you can do. Cause it's kind of like Atomic Habits, right? And then you're going to kind of be building on it and just start really small. If it's a goal that you want to do, then even reading for 15 minutes a day would help. And then you can build to the 30 minutes a day. And I like that you said that because I often don't read. I read a lot until I started this podcast. And now I read a lot about podcasting and AI and things. But I used to read a lot, but now if I have a short amount of time, I won't read. And so I'm very glad that you're on because you are reigniting my belief that I can actually still read a book instead of doing research and, reading up on things. So this is really, really enlightening. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy that it is. And reading has other benefits too, obviously. One thing that I think about is in today's digital age, like as our attention span gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, reading a physical paper book is an act of monotasking. It's focusing on one thing at a time. And you can almost like lengthen your attention span as a skill that's then transferable to other activities like work. And so like if I was ever like if my agency imploded and I ever had to go apply for a job, I sometimes joke around saying like, I would list my ability to perform deep work and focus on things as a skill set because nobody else my age, right, late 20s, early 30s, has that skill set anymore. But so that's the first half of my book. The second half, I do have over 100 habits. They're broken down into healthy, wealthy, and happy habits. And they've come from the books that I've read. These are things that I've tried to implement, things that I've found useful. And so I've sort of shortcut. It's kind of like a shortcut for the 400, 500 books I've read. I'll put like the best of the best info in at least those three categories in there so that people can, again, use it as a discovery tool and then maybe go do deeper research.
Okay. Well, this sounds wonderful. And is your BookThinkers, is it mostly self-help books or is it just all books?
It's all nonfiction, personal development style books.
Okay,
I mean, I say if a book can be read and then used to improve your life, like we'll cover it. So sometimes we get like business fables, some philosophy, psychology, but it's a lot of business style stuff.
Okay. That's very cool. So it's a website and you're online and you can buy your book and we'll put the link to your book in the show notes. And it sounds like you got a lot going on. I'm very, very intrigued by all of this. And thank you for inspiring me to read more.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy that it resonated. So yeah, BookThinkers on Instagram, that's our largest community. We've got about 165,000 readers over there. We post a new piece of content every day. Our podcast, we've interviewed a lot of like business type authors, like Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozy, those types of people over there if you want to get a preview for their book. And I appreciate the opportunity today. I really do.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on. This has been great. And as I said, it's very, very inspiring. So well, am I missing anything that you wanted to mention or any big overarching themes that are part of your book?
No, I appreciate the opportunity again. I think that the right book at the right time can change somebody's life. And I think totally that Rise of the Reader is a great place to start, or you could start with Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth. And I'll be reading this.
Yeah, read that and get back to me and let me know what you think about it.
Yeah, will do.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being on. And thank you for listening, everybody. And make sure that you leave a review and share with your friends if you enjoyed it. And I appreciate you listening.